Why undiluted sugar harms. Article published in Medical Hypotheses 2004, 63, 933-938. Evolutionary legacy, form of ingestion, not quantity, is the key factor in producing the effects of sugar on human health. Riccardo Baschetti. Summary. Tens of dietary trials have been conducted to investigate the metabolic effects of sugar, sucrose, and its impact on human health. All of those studies took into account only the quantity of ingested sugar. By contrast, not a single study attempted to assess whether the form in which sugar is consumed plays a role in producing its metabolic effects. The failure of cohorts of researchers to specify how they administered sugar in their dietary trials may well explain why the results of those studies are extremely contradictory. These discrepant findings, understandably, resulted in conflicting opinions about sugar and in divergent guidelines about its recommended consumption. The evolutionary line of reasoning expounded in this article leads to conclude that the form in which sugar is ingested, not its quantity, constitutes the most important factor in producing the metabolic effects of sugar and its impact on human health. As a consequence, for example, the consumption of 100 g of sugar per day can be either detrimental or innocuous, depending on the form in which sugar is ingested. Specifically, the evolutionary hypothesis advanced in this paper implies that sugar can predispose to type 2 diabetes and can cause unhealthy changes in blood lipids if it is consumed in solid forms or in dense solutions containing more than 250 g/L, whereas sugar is harmless if it is consumed in more dilute concentrations. This evolutionary hypothesis, in view of its intuitively far-reaching clinical implications, should be tested by at least one dietary trial. Introduction. There is no topic that sparks more controversy in the community of clinical nutritionists than does the impact of dietary sugar, sucrose, on human health. 1. This controversy, which is not new 2 to 5 and resulted in remarkable incongruity between the sugar consumption guidelines proposed in different European countries. 6, has recently become sharp even at the international level. As Jim Mann has lately pointed out in The Lancet. 7, the World Health Organization, WHO, and the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, in a joint report, recommend that free sugars, represented mostly by sucrose, should be restricted to less than 10% of total energy, whereas other authoritative reports do not concur. 7 and state that 25% of food and drink intake can be sugar-based. 8. Even though Jim Mann 7 could have plausibly explained these conflicting opinions by citing at least one of 3 post-publication letters 9 to 11, he nevertheless ignored all of them, despite the fact that failure to recognize the critical footprint of primary research distorts clinical knowledge. 12. Such a misleading failure, unfortunately, is rather common. 13, 14. Therefore, considering that a formal article is less likely to be ignored than are letters. 14, the present article expounds more extensively what had been briefly discussed in those 3 letters 9 to 11 and in the previous one 15 that underpins them. Contradictory findings. The contrasting opinions about the recommended intake of sucrose reflect the puzzlingly contradictory findings that have been reported by the researchers who investigated the metabolic effects of sucrose. Several studies found that dietary sucrose did not produce detrimental effects in normal subjects 16 to 19 and in diabetic patients 20 to 26, whereas other studies reported that sucrose intake caused deleterious metabolic effects in healthy subjects 27 to 36, in diabetic patients 37 to 39 and in hypertriglyceridemic 40, hyperinsulinemic 41, and atherosclerotic individuals 42. Additionally, indirect evidence that sucrose can be harmful is also inferred from the fact that its dietary limitation 43 or elimination 44 led to a beneficial correction of hypertriglyceridemia 43, 44, which is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease 45, 46. The correlation between sucrose intake and coronary artery disease was particularly investigated and underlined by John Yudkin 4, 31, 35, 47, 48, whose bestseller about sucrose was tellingly entitled Pure, White, and Deadly 49. A careful analysis of the studies on sucrose suggests that their discrepant findings can be explained by the different forms in which sucrose was consumed. Many researchers omitted completely to specify how they administered sucrose 17, 19, 21, 27, 28, 31, 35, 36, 38, 40, 42, thereby implicitly suggesting that the form in which we consume sucrose is unimportant in producing its metabolic effects. Other authors, however, did write a few words to describe the forms in which they gave sucrose, but these forms were too mixed or were not specified in detail. Fortunately, some researchers administered sucrose in just one form, and its specification is detailed enough to hint that the form of consuming sucrose is metabolically more important than its ingested quantity. As a paradigmatic example, Reiser et al. 33, who used sucrose patties, found that sucrose feeding produces undesirable changes in several of the parameters associated with glucose tolerance 33, whereas Anderson et al. 18, who administered sucrose in a liquid diet, wrote that in contrast to reports in the literature, the feeding of 80% of calories as sucrose did not lead to an impairment of the GDT glucose tolerance test in any subject 18. Moreover, in their first companion study of 1979, Reiser et al. 32 reported that 210 g/day of sucrose in the form of patties increased significantly triglycerides and cholesterol, whereas Abrera et al. 23 found that 220 g/day of sucrose diluted in a specially prepared beverage did not affect glycemic or triglyceridemic control in type 2 diabetic patients 23. Evolutionary explanations. Niss and Williams 50 pointed out that proximate explanations answer what, and how, questions, evolutionary explanations answer why, questions 50, p7. Only an evolutionary line of reasoning, therefore, can enable us to explain why virtually the same quantity of sucrose, 210 versus 220 g/day, was detrimental in solid form 32 and, conversely, proved innocuous in liquid form 23. For millions of years, early humans and their arboreal ancestors were essentially frugivorous, because they lived mainly on fruit 51 to 54, much as the modern chimpanzee does 51. In view of the 99.4% genetic identity between humans and chimpanzees 55, it is reasonable to assume that humankind's metabolic physiology still largely reflects the characteristics of fruit, by which our bodies were unalterably molded during those 50 million years in the trees 53. Given that fruit molded our bodies, it is not surprising that eating fruit reduces mortality 56, has a protective effect on cancer risk 57, reduces risk factors for cardiovascular disease 58, and protects against the common chronic diseases of adulthood 59. Jenkins et al. 58, to account for the beneficial effects of a diet rich in fruit, appropriately noted that this diet may have been consumed early in human evolution 58. Nowadays, however, fruit should not be consumed after starchy foods, which were nutritionally unknown to our frugivorous ancestors 60, to avoid a possible hypertriglyceridemic effect 61. Considering that in the tropics, where our frugivorous ancestors lived 51 to 54, sucrose is the main carbohydrate of fruit 62, humankind's sucrose metabolism can be fully elucidated only by keeping in mind that sucrose was available to our frugivorous ancestors solely in the form of solutions present in fruit 63. These latter can be regarded as solid juices, because their solidity is merely due to small quantities of dietary fiber, about 1 to 3% by weight, 63, and because gastric digestion results in liquefaction of solids 64. The genetic molding produced by the sugar solutions present in fruits explains why sucrose in solid forms was detrimental 32, 33, whereas sucrose diluted in liquids proved harmless 18, 23. That the metabolic effects of sucrose depend on its form of ingestion is also shown by the observation that diabetes was absent in cane cutters who ate large amounts of sugar by chewing cane in which sucrose is diluted, but common in their employers who ate large amounts as refined sugar. 65. In view of the genetic molding produced by diluted sugars, sucrose in solid forms or in dense solutions constitutes a genetically unknown food. 66, 67, which largely accounts for the epidemic of type 2 diabetes that invariably ravages newly westernized populations after their nutritional contact with the formerly unknown sugar that they consume generally in concentrated form. 66. Westerners, by contrast, thanks to millenary natural selection, have achieved partial adaptation to concentrated sugar and, consequently, they are somewhat resistant to its harmful effects. 66. Gastric emptying. The evolutionary explanation for the detrimental effects of sucrose consumed in solid forms. 32, 33 is strongly supported by the fact that the gastric emptying of concentrated sugar solutions does not appear to be a physiological phenomenon, because it is sharply different from the gastric emptying of diluted solutions. Indeed, diluted solutions of sucrose leave the stomach at the same rate of isocaloric glucose solutions. 68, which are delivered to the intestine progressively more slowly with increasing concentration. 69. As a result, the gastric emptying of three quite different solutions containing 50 g/L, 125 g/L, and 250 g/L of glucose, respectively, is constantly linear, i.e., it allows an identical quantity of glucose to be delivered to the intestine per unit time, despite the five-fold concentration range of those solutions. 69. Given the genetic similarity between humans and other primates. 55 and in view of the central role of fruit in the ancestral diets of humans and other primates. 51 to 54, including monkeys. 70, it is not surprising that the linear gastric emptying of glucose solutions within the range 50 to 250 g/L was found not only in humans. 69 but also in monkeys. 71. In these primates, intriguingly, gastric emptying does not slow further when glucose concentration exceeds 250 g/L and there is more rapid delivery of glucose to the intestine. 71. Such an accelerated gastric emptying of concentrated solutions accounts for the detrimental effects of sucrose ingested in solid forms. 32, 33, because gastric emptying is so important in glucose homeostasis. 72, 73 that a deceleration of gastric emptying represents a therapeutic possibility in the treatment of type 2 diabetes. 74, 75. In view of the linear gastric emptying of glucose solutions within the range 50 to 250 g/L, some authors wondered, why do meals of high caloric concentrations empty more slowly in volume but just slowly enough as to deliver the same number of calories over time as more dilute meals? 76. To answer this question, we should remember Theodosius Dobzhansky's statement that nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. 77. Indeed, considering that the metabolic physiology of primates, including humans, has been largely molded by various fruits. 51 to 54, 70, in which the total content of different sugars virtually overlaps the range 50 to 250 g/L. 62, 63, 78, the linear gastric emptying of solutions within that range makes sense only if viewed as an excellent evolutionary strategy for preserving the glucose homeostasis of frugivorous primates, despite the wide caloric range of their main food. The fact that the gastric emptying of glucose solutions containing more than 250 g/L, unlike solutions within this limit, is not linear suggests that its exponential pattern represents a non-physiological phenomenon, elicited by the genetically unknown ingestion of a sugar in concentration exceeding the highest one present in fresh fruits. 62, 63, 78, which molded genetically the metabolic physiology of frugivorous primates. One might object that also honey and dried fruits, which consist of sugars in solid forms, were available to early humans and other primates. Honey, however, in ancestral times, before the appearance of apiculture, was quite rare and guarded by bees. 79. Dried fruits, too, were very scarce in the tropical, equatorial rainforests, inhabited by our frugivorous ancestors and other primates. 51 to 54, 70, because of high moisture, copious rains, and the shade of the thick forest. The ingestion of honey and dried fruits, therefore, was not abundant, frequent, regular, and common enough to modify the genetic molding produced by the plentiful, daily, constant, and widespread consumption of fresh fruits. 60. Darwinian medicine. If future research will verify the evolutionary suggestion that the rate of gastric emptying is directly related to the rate of exogenous glucose oxidation 81, then Dobbs-Hansky's old statement about the enlightening capacity of evolutionary reasoning 77 will emerge to be far-sighted. As has recently been remarked, the doctors of the future will find it necessary to take account of the biological imperatives that Darwin revealed. 82. Darwinian, or evolutionary, medicine is relatively new. 50, 83, 84. Unfortunately, despite its heuristic ability 50, 85 to 89, and its potentialities in preventive medicine 50, 90 to 92, Darwinian medicine is generally neglected. 82. This may partly be due to the fact that many doctors accept a religious creation account that excludes evolution. 82. However, considering that even the Pope admitted that Darwin was right about evolution 93, religious dogmas should not represent an obstacle to the espousal and development of Darwinian medicine, especially in view of its unequaled capacity to gather the diverse strands of medical science and practice and weave them into a coherent explanatory narrative. 94. Paraphrasing Dobbs-Hansky's statement 77, it has rightly been suggested that nothing in medicine makes sense except in the light of evolution. 95. Conclusion. As Eaton et al. 96 pointed out, evolutionary medicine possesses the capacity to suggest new avenues for conventional research. 96. Indeed, it is to be hoped that the evolutionary arguments discussed in the present article will lead some open-minded researchers to conduct the first dietary trial aimed at assessing whether the form in which sucrose is consumed plays a role in producing its metabolic effects. For example, those researchers could determine whether the consumption of 100 g/d of sucrose, ingested in the fasting state for 1 month, reduces insulin sensitivity and increases blood lipids in healthy volunteers when sucrose is taken in solid forms or in dense solutions exceeding 250 g/L, whereas the subsequent consumption of the same quantity of sucrose, ingested in the same state for the same period, allows the same subjects to reverse those undesirable effects when sucrose is consumed in more dilute concentrations. References. 1. Odia K. Manji. Importance of retaining a national dietary guideline for sugar. Medj Ost 2001, 175, 165-6. 2. Abrera C. Emanuele Ma. Sucrose in the Diabetic Diet. Diabetes Care 1987, 10, 667-8. 3. Revan G.M., Hollenbeck C., Colston A. Sucrose in the Diabetic Diet, a reply. Diabetes Care 1987, 10, 668-9. 4. Yudkin J. Diet and Coronary Heart Disease, Why Blame Fat? JRSOC Med 1992, 85, 515-6. 5. Ashton D. Diet and Coronary Heart Disease. JRSOC Med 1993, 86, 183. 6. Ruxton CHS, Garceau FJS, Cottrell RC. Guidelines for Sugar Consumption in Europe, Is a Quantitative Approach Justified? J. Klin Nudra 1999, 53, 503-13. 7. Man J. Free Sugars and Human Health, Sufficient Evidence for Action? Lancet 2004, 363, 1068-70. 8. Ashraf H. Whose diet report prompts food industry backlash. Lancet 2003, 361, 1442. 9. Baschetti R. Sucrose in weight loss regimens. AMJ Klin Nudra 1998, 67, 150-1. 10. Baschetti R. High sucrose diets and insulin sensitivity. AMJ Klin Nudra 1999, 69, 575 to 6. 11 Baschetti are concentrations of sugars in high carbohydrate diets. AMJ Clean Nutri 2001, 73, 129 to 30. 12 Horton are post-publication criticism and the shaping of clinical knowledge. JAMA 2002, 287, 2843 to 7. 13 Baschetti are chronic fatigue syndrome, an endocrine disease off limits for endocrinologists. J. Clean Invest 2003, 33, 1029 to 31. 14 Burden AC recognizing letters in systematic reviews. Lancet 2000, 355, 2170. 15 Baschetti are sucrose metabolism. NZ Met J 1997, 110, 43. 16 Surwit Rs, Feengloss MN, McCaskill CC, ETAL metabolic and behavioral effects of a high sucrose diet during weight loss. AMJ Clean Nutri 1997, 65, 908 to 15. 17 Grande F, Anderson JT, Keys A sucrose and various carbohydrate-containing foods and serum lipids in man. AMJ Clean Nutri 1974, 27, 1043 to 51. 18 Anderson JW, Herman RH, Zokim D. Effect of high glucose and high sucrose diets on glucose tolerance of normal men. AMJ Clean Nutri 1973, 26, 600 to 7. 19 Dunnigan MG, 5T, McKitty MT, Crosby SM. The effects of isocaloric exchange of dietary starch and sucrose on glucose tolerance, plasma insulin, and serum lipids in man. Clinsci 1970, 38, 1-9. 20 Malerbida, Pava ESA, Duarte AL, Wajchenberg BL. Metabolic effects of dietary sucrose and fructose in type 2 diabetic subjects. Diabetes Care 1996, 19, 1249 to 56. 21 Bantle JP, Swanson JE, Thomas W., Lane DC. Metabolic effects of dietary sucrose in type 2 diabetic subjects. Diabetes Care 1993, 16, 1301 to 5. 22 Colagier IS, Miller JJ, Edwards RA. Metabolic effects of adding sucrose and aspartame to the diet of subjects with non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. AMJ Clean Nutri 1989, 50, 474 to 8. 23 Abrera C, Derler J. Large variations of sucrose in constant carbohydrate diets in type 2 diabetes. AMJ Med 1988, 84, 193 to 200. 24 Cooper PL, Walkvist ML, Simpson RW. Sucrose versus saccharin as an added sweetener in non-insulin dependent diabetes, short and medium-term metabolic effects. Diabet Med 1988, 5, 676 to 80. 25 Bantle JP, Lane DC, Thomas JW. Metabolic effects of dietary fructose and sucrose in type I and II diabetic subjects. JAMA 1986, 256, 3241 to 6. 26 Peterson, Lambert J., Gehring S., ETAL sucrose in the diet of diabetic patients, just another carbohydrate? Diabetology 1986, 29, 216 to 20. 27 Markman P., Rabin A., Astrup A. Ad libitum intake of low-fat diets rich in either starchy foods or sucrose, effects on blood lipids, factor 7 coagulant activity, and fibrinogen. Metabolism 2000, 49, 731 to 5. 28 Daily Me, Vale C., Walker M., Littlefield A., Alberti KGMM, Mathers JC. Acute effects on insulin sensitivity and diurnal metabolic profiles of a high sucrose compared with a high starch diet. AMJ Clin Nutri 1998, 67, 1186 to 96. 29 Grant Key, Murray MP, Densema. Sucrose in a lipid-rich meal amplifies the postprandial excursion of serum and lipoprotein triglyceride and cholesterol concentrations by decreasing triglyceride clearance. AMJ Clin Nutri 1994, 59, 853 to 60. 30 Albrink MJ, Ulrich IH. Interaction of dietary sucrose and fiber on serum lipids in healthy young men fed high carbohydrate diets. AMJ Clin Nutri 1986, 43, 419 to 28. 31 Yudkin J, Isa O, Kong SS, Miraji S, Bruckner for KR dietary sucrose affects plasma HDL cholesterol concentration in young men. And Nutrimetab 1986, 30, 261 to 6. 32 Reiser S, Hallfrisch J, Michaelis OE, Lazar FL, Martin Re, Prather ES. Isocaloric exchange of dietary starch and sucrose in humans. I effects on levels of fasting blood lipids. AMJ Clin Nutri 1979, 32, 1659 to 69. 33 Reiser S, Handler HB, Gardner LB, Hallfrisch JG, Michaelis OE, Prather ES. Isocaloric exchange of dietary starch and sucrose in humans. 2 Effect on fasting blood insulin, glucose, and glucagon and on insulin and glucose response to a sucrose load. AMJ Clin Nutri 1979, 32, 2206 to 16. 34 Manji, Truswell as, Pimstone BL. The different effects of oral sucrose and glucose on alimentary lipemia. Clinsci 1971, 41, 123 to 9. 35 Santo S, Yudkin J. The effect of dietary sucrose on blood lipids, serum insulin, platelet adhesiveness, and body weight in human volunteers. Postgrad Met J 1969, 45, 602 to 7. 36 Cohen A.M., Teitelbaum A., Baylock M., Grown J.J. Effect of interchanging bread and sucrose as main source of carbohydrate in a low-fat diet on the glucose tolerance curve of healthy volunteer subjects. AMJ Clin Nutri 1966, 19, 59 to 62. 37 Colston A.M., Hollenbeck C.B., Swilaki Alm, Chen Y. De, Revan G.M. Deleterious metabolic effects of high carbohydrate, sucrose-containing diets in patients with non-insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus. AMJ Med 1987, 82, 213 to 20. 38 Colston A.M., Hollenbeck C.B., Donner C.C., Williams R., Chia Y.M., Revan G.M. Metabolic effects of added dietary sucrose in individuals with non-insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, NIDDM. Metabolism 1985, 34, 962 to 6. 39 Gelish W.S., Emanuel Ama, Abrera C-graded sucrose/carbohydrate diets in overtly hypertriglyceridemic diabetic patients. AMJ Med 1984, 77, 1015 to 22. 40 Luigi, Colston A., Hollenbeck C., Revan G. The effect of sucrose content in high and low carbohydrate diets on plasma glucose, insulin, and lipid responses in hypertriglyceridemic humans. J. Clin Endocrinol Metab 1984, 59, 636 to 42. 41 Reiser S., Bonnie, Hallfrisch J., Michaelis O.E., Keeney M., Prather E.S. Serum insulin and glucose in hyperinsulinemic subjects fed 3 different levels of sucrose. AMJ Clin Nutri 1981, 34, 2348 to 58. 42 QOPT, Bassett Dr. Dietary sugar in the production of hyperglyceridemia. And in turn Med 1965, 62, 1199 to 212. 43 Smith J.B., Niven B., Mann G. The effect of reduced extrinsic sucrose intake on plasma triglyceride levels. Ure J. Clin Nutra 1996, 50, 498 to 504. 44 Roberts A.M. Effects of a sucrose-free diet on the serum lipid levels of men in Antarctica. Lancet 1973, 1, 1201 to 4. 45 Miller M. The epidemiology of triglyceride as a coronary artery disease risk factor. ClinCardial 1999, 22, 2-1, 2-6. 46 Austin Ma. Epidemiology of hypertriglyceridemia and cardiovascular disease. AMJ Cardial 1999, 83, 13F, 6F. 47 Yudkin J, Santo S, Kutkar VV sugar intake, serum insulin, and plat-eld adhesiveness in men with and without peripheral vascular disease. Postgrad Met J 1969, 45, 608 to 11. 48 Yudkin J sucrose, coronary heart disease, diabetes, and obesity, do hormones provide a link? AM Hart J 1988, 115, 493 to 8. 49 Southgate D obituary, J Yudkin. BR Met J 1995, 311, 505. 50 RM, Williams G.C. Evolution and Healing, The New Science of Darwinian Medicine. London, Weidenfeld and Nicholson, 1995. 51 Sponheimer M., Leethorpe J.A. Isotopic evidence for the diet of an early hominid, Australopithecus africanus. Science 1999, 283, 368 to 70. 52 Woodby, Brooks A. We Are What We Ate. Nature 1999, 400, 219 to 20. 53 Hackett E. The Fruit People. Met J. Aust 1984, 141, 736 to 8. 54 KRF Diets of Early Miocene African Hominoids. Nature 1977, 268, 628 to 30. 55 Wildman D., Udden M., Luigi, Grossman Lee, Goodman M. Implications of Natural Selection in Shaping 99.4% Non-Synonymous DNA Identity Between Humans and Chimpanzees, Enlarging Genus Homo. PROC Natal Academic Sci USA 2003, 100, 7181 to 8. 56 Strandhagen E., Hansen P.O., Boceus I., Isaacson B., Erickson H. High fruit intake may reduce mortality among middle-aged and elderly men. The Study of Men Born in 1913. Ure J. Clin Nutra 2000, 54, 337 to 41. 57 Riboli E., Nora T. Epidemiologic evidence of the protective effect of fruit and vegetables on cancer risk. AMJ Clin Nutra 2003, 78, 559 to 69. 58 Jenkins DJA, Popovich DG, Kendall CWC, ETAL effect of a diet high in vegetables, fruit, and nuts on serum lipids. Metabolism 1997, 46, 530 to 7. 59 Gilman MW. Enjoy your fruits and vegetables. BR Met J 1996, 313, 765 to 6. 60 Baschetti R. Paleolithic Nutrition. Ure J. Clin Nutra 1997, 51, 715 to 6. 61 Baschetti R. Eating Fruit and Hypertriglyceridemia. NZ Met J 1996, 109, 128 to 9. 62 Rumpasutthapong C. Banfot Kasam S., Commandra S., 10 Phaeachidravi postprandial glucose and insulin responses to various tropical fruits of equivalent carbohydrate content in non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Diabetes Residential Clin-Prac 1991, 14, 123-32. 63 Bolton RP, Heaton KW, Burrows LF. The role of dietary fiber in satiety, glucose, and insulin, studies with fruit and fruit juice. AMJ Clin Nutri 1981, 34, 211-7. 64 Dubois Diet and Gastric Digestion. AMJ Clin Nutri 1985, 42, 1003-5. 65 Campbell GD, Bachelor L, Goldberg MD Sugar Intake and Diabetes. Diabetes 1967, 16, 62-3. 66 Baschetti R. Diabetes epidemic in newly westernized populations, is it due to thrifty genes or to genetically unknown foods? JRSOC Med 1998, 91, 622-5. 67 Baschetti are genetically unknown foods or thrifty genes. AMJ Clin Nutri 1999, 70, 420-1. 68 Elias E., Gibson GJ, Greenwood LF, Hunt JN, Tripp JH. The slowing of gastric emptying by monosaccharides and disaccharides in test meals. J. Physiol 1968, 194, 317-26. 69 Breener W., Hendricks TR, McHugh PR Regulation of the gastric emptying of glucose. Gastroenterology 1983, 85, 76-82. 70 Ungar PS, KRF. The Dietary Adaptations of European Myosin Catarrhines. PROC Natal Academic Sci USA 1995, 92, 5479-81. 71 McHugh PR, Moran TH Calories and Gastric Emptying, a Regulatory Capacity with Implications for Feeding. AMJ Physiol 1979, 236, R254, 60. 72 McDonald IA Physiological Regulation of Gastric Emptying and Glucose Absorption. Diabet Med 1996, 13, S11, 5. 73 Horowitz M., Edelbrock Mal, Wisher J.M., Strathoff J.W. Relationship between oral glucose tolerance and gastric emptying in normal healthy subjects. Diabetology 1993, 36, 857-62. 74 Phillips W.T., Schwartz J.G. Decelerating gastric emptying, therapeutic possibilities in type 2 diabetes. Diabet Med 1996, 13, S44, 8. 75 Moises C., Young A., Cold Herman O. Modulation of gastric emptying as a therapeutic approach to glycemic control. Diabet Med 1996, 13, S34, 8. 76 McHugh PR, Moran TH, Worth JB Post-pyloric regulation of gastric emptying in rhesus monkeys. AMJ Physiol 1982, 243, R408, 15. 77 Dobbs Hansky T. Nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. AM Bile Teach 1973, 35, 125-9. 78 Hu Hour Plow J, Savsky J, Daly G. The glycemic response to meals with 6 different fruits in insulin-dependent diabetics using a home blood glucose monitoring system. AMJ Clin Nutri 1987, 45, 92-7. 79 Alsop Ka, Brand Miller J. Honey Revisited, a reappraisal of honey in pre-industrial diets. BRJ Nutri 1996, 75, 513-20. 80 Baschetti are gender differences in gastric emptying. Urj Nuclemed 1999, 26, 295-6. 81 Baschetti R. Gastric emptying, gender differences. NZ Met J 1997, 110, 238. 82 Downey Jr. Evolutionary Biology. Lancet 2004, 363, 1168. 83 Williams G.C., Nis R.M. The Dawn of Darwinian Medicine. QRev Bile 1991, 66, 1-22. 84 Smith J.G. Darwinian, Evolutionary, Medicine. South Met J 1996, 89, 1028-30. 85 Milton K. Nutritional Characteristics of Wild Primate Foods. Do the diets of our closest living relatives have lessons for us? Nutrition 1999, 15, 488-98. 86 Eaton SB, Eaton 3 SB, Connor M.J., Shostak M. An evolutionary perspective enhances understanding of human nutritional requirements. J. Nutr 1996, 126, 1732-40. 87 Goldsmith M.F. Ancestors may provide clinical answers, say Darwinian medical evolutionists. JAMA 1993, 269, 1477-80. 88 Tobian L. Potassium and hypertension. Nutrirev 1988, 46, 273-83. 89 Baschetti R. Vegetarian Diet. QJ Med 2000, 93, 387. 90 Eaton SB, Strassman by, Nis RM, ETAL Evolutionary Health Promotion. Previous Med 2002, 34, 109-18. 91 Eaton SB, Cordain L., Lindeberg S. Evolutionary Health Promotion, a consideration of common counterarguments. Previous Med 2002, 34, 119-23. 92 Baschetti R. Preventing Type 2 Diabetes, an Evolutionary View. Diabet Med 2004, 21, 649-50. 93 Abbott A Papal Confession, Darwin was right about evolution. Nature 1996, 383, 753. 94 Charlton B.G. A Syllabus for Evolutionary Medicine. JRSOC Med 1997, 90, 397-9. 95 Lee M. Evolution and Healing. Lancet 1995, 346, 686. 96 Eaton SB, Eaton 3 SB, Connor M.J. Paleolithic Nutrition Revisited, a 12-year retrospective on its nature and implications. Ur J. Klin Nutra 1997, 51, 207-16.